There comes a moment in life when you realize that silence can be louder than words. A moment when you extend your hand, but no one reaches back. A moment when your presence is overlooked, your words go unheard, and your feelings seem invisible. Being ignored, it stings. It stings because we are all human and we crave connection. We want to be seen, to be valued, to be heard. But what happens when the world turns away? When your voice echoes into emptiness? When the people you thought would stand by you suddenly disappear? Yes, it hurts. It shakes you to your core. But my dear friends, let me tell you something. It is also a lesson. There comes a time in life when we all experience the sting of being ignored. It could be in a room full of people where your presence goes unnoticed, in a conversation where your words seem to fade into the background, or in relationships where your efforts are met with indifference. The feeling of being invisible, of not being acknowledged, can be deeply painful. It makes you question your worth, your significance, and sometimes even your very existence. When people ignore you, it is not just the absence of attention that hurts. It is the feeling of being unimportant. It is the silence that follows when you expect a response, the lack of appreciation when you put your heart into something, and the realization that you may not hold the place in someone's life that you once thought you did. It shakes you. It makes you wonder if you matter at all. The pain of being ignored is often underestimated. People assume that words hurt more than silence, but in reality, silence can be deafening. It carries the weight of all the unspoken words, all the unanswered questions, and all the unexpressed emotions. It leaves a person standing alone, searching for clarity in the absence of explanation. It can make even the strongest individuals feel vulnerable. Even the most confident ones doubt themselves. Being ignored doesn't just happen in personal relationships. It happens in workplaces, in friendships, in society as a whole. It happens when your ideas are overlooked in a meeting, when your presence is disregarded in a group, or when your struggles are met with indifference. It can create an emotional wound that lingers, making people hesitant to express themselves, to reach out, or to believe in their own value. Many people internalize this experience, believing that if they were more interesting, more successful, or more lovable, they wouldn't be ignored. But that is the deception of pain. It makes you turn against yourself. It makes you think that the problem lies within you, when in reality, it often lies in the circumstances, in the priorities of others, or in the way people themselves are struggling with their own battles. Being ignored is painful because, as humans, we long for connection. We want to be seen, to be understood, to be appreciated. We want to feel that we belong, that we have a place in the hearts and minds of those we care about. When that connection is absent, it creates an emptiness, a sense of isolation that can be hard to escape from. The ache of being overlooked is something almost everyone experiences at some point, yet it often feels like the loneliest battle. It is not just about attention. It is about recognition. It is about the simple but profound human need to be acknowledged, not for ego, not for vanity, but for the reassurance that our existence holds meaning in the world around us. From an early age, we are conditioned to seek validation from others. As children, we look for approval from our parents and teachers. As we grow, we begin to measure our worth based on how many friends we have, how people react to us, and whether or not we receive recognition for our efforts. This pattern continues into adulthood, where compliments, promotions, social acceptance, and external praise shape the way we view ourselves. But what happens when the validation does not come? What happens when your efforts go unnoticed? When people disregard your presence? Or when the appreciation you long for never arrives? Many people fall into the trap of believing that their value is determined by how others perceive them. They tie their self-worth to how many people acknowledge them, how often they are included, or how much admiration they receive. The problem with this mindset is that it places the power of self-worth in the hands of others, people who are flawed, distracted, or fighting their own battles. If the acknowledgement you seek does not come, does that mean you are any less valuable? Relying on external validation creates a cycle of dependence that can be exhausting and disheartening. It makes people chase approval, constantly adjusting themselves to fit into expectations that are ever-changing. They begin to shape their personalities, opinions, and even dreams based on what will gain them acceptance rather than what truly fulfills them. In doing so, they lose sight of their authentic selves, molding their identity around what pleases others rather than what makes them whole. The truth is, self-worth is an internal realization, not an external reward. It is something that exists within a person, regardless of how the world perceives them. Whether someone acknowledges your work or not, your efforts still have value. Whether someone appreciates your kindness or not, your goodness still exists. Whether someone chooses to see your presence or not, you are still worthy of love, respect, and belonging. People's recognition of your worth is often influenced by their own circumstances, biases, and limitations. Sometimes they fail to see the greatness in you because they are too preoccupied with their own struggles. Other times, they might withhold acknowledgement because of their own insecurities. And in many cases, people take others for granted until they are no longer there. This does not mean that your value has fluctuated. It simply means that you cannot depend on others to define it for you. The journey to self-worth begins with a shift in perspective. It requires looking inward rather than outward, measuring success by personal growth rather than external validation, and embracing authenticity over approval. It is about recognizing that you are whole even when no one acknowledges you, that your contributions matter even when they go unnoticed, and that your existence is meaningful even when the world fails to affirm it. When you detach your worth from others' recognition, you reclaim the power to define yourself on your own terms. Rejection is one of the most painful experiences a person can go through. Whether it comes in the form of being ignored, excluded, or dismissed, it leaves a mark on the heart. It makes people feel as though they are not good enough, as if they lack something essential that others are looking for. It is easy to take rejection personally, to believe that it is a reflection of one's flaws or shortcomings. The mind begins to replay the situation, searching for reasons, wondering what could have been done differently, and wishing for a different outcome. What many people fail to realize in the moment is that rejection is not always a punishment. It is often protection. It is life's way of redirecting a person towards something better, something more aligned with their purpose and potential. The pain of rejection blinds people to the truth that sometimes what they are chasing is not meant for them. The friendships that fade, the opportunities that slip away, the relationships that do not work out, each of these moments may feel like losses, but in reality, they are making space for something greater. Every closed door is not a dead end, it is a detour. People often become fixated on a particular outcome, believing that they know what is best for them. They pour their energy into relationships that do not value them, careers that drain them, and dreams that do not align with their true calling. When they face rejection, they see it as a failure, but in reality, it is the universe nudging them in a different direction. It is forcing them to pause, to reflect, and to consider paths they might not have explored otherwise. History is filled with stories of people who faced rejection only to later realize that it was the best thing that ever happened to them. Writers who had their manuscripts turned down by countless publishers before finally finding success. Entrepreneurs who were told their ideas would never work only to later build empires. People who believed they had lost everything only to discover a new passion, a new purpose, and a new version of themselves. The common thread among them is that they did not let rejection define them. Instead, they allowed it to refine them. The most powerful lesson rejection teaches is resilience. It forces people to develop the ability to stand back up, to rebuild, and to keep going, even when the world says no. It strengthens character, sharpens focus, and builds a kind of inner strength that no amount of validation can provide. When a person stops seeing rejection as an ending and starts viewing it as redirection, their entire perspective shifts. They no longer beg for doors to open. They trust that the right ones will. They no longer dwell on who did not choose them. They focus on choosing themselves. They no longer fear rejection. They embrace it as a necessary part of the journey toward something greater. Silence has a way of speaking louder than words. When people ignore you, when your voice goes unheard, when your presence is overlooked, it is easy to feel small, to wonder if you mattered at all. The sting of being ignored is not just about the absence of attention. It is about the absence of acknowledgement. It is about feeling unseen in a world that thrives on connection. But in the depths of that silence, there is a hidden strength, a lesson that can transform the way you see yourself and the world around you. Resilience is not something people are born with, it is something they develop through experience. It is built in moments of disappointment, in times of uncertainty, in situations where people feel abandoned or forgotten. When someone ignores you, you have two choices: to internalize it as a sign that you are unworthy, or to use it as an opportunity to grow stronger. Those who choose the latter begin to realize that their value does not decrease simply because someone fails to see it. They learn that their worth is not dependent on how others treat them, but on how they see themselves. Silence teaches the power of self reliance. It forces people to listen to their own voice when no one else is listening. It teaches them to validate themselves rather than seeking approval from others. It pushes them to become their own source of encouragement, their own source of belief. When people stop waiting for validation and start believing in themselves, they unlock a level of freedom that can never be taken away. They stop begging for attention and start commanding respect. Not by demanding it from others, but by carrying themselves with confidence, knowing they are enough. Being ignored can be a painful experience, but it can also be a catalyst for transformation. It strips away illusions, revealing who truly values you and who does not. It teaches patience, endurance, and the ability to stand alone without losing yourself. Many of the strongest individuals in history were once ignored, overlooked, or dismissed. Yet they refused to let silence define them. They used it as fuel to rise, to prove to themselves, not to the world, that they were capable of achieving greatness. Resilience is not about never feeling hurt. It is about not allowing that hurt to break you. It is about understanding that being ignored is not always a reflection of you, but rather a reflection of others' inability to recognize your worth. It is about knowing that silence is not a void. It is a space for growth. It is a space where you learn to stand on your own, to trust in your abilities, and to move forward without needing permission. The moments of silence in life, the times when you feel unseen, are the very moments that shape you into someone who no longer seeks to be noticed, but instead becomes impossible to overlook. From the moment we step into the world, we are taught to seek validation. As children, we look for approval from parents and teachers. As we grow older, we measure our worth by how many people acknowledge us, how often we are praised, and whether or not we fit into societal expectations. The need to be accepted, to be appreciated, to be seen as valuable becomes a driving force behind many of our decisions. We shape our behavior, our choices, and sometimes even our dreams based on what will gain approval from others. But in this endless pursuit of validation, something crucial is lost: our own voice, our own authenticity, our own belief in ourselves. The truth is, external validation is fleeting. People's opinions change, their attention shifts, and their recognition is often inconsistent. If your sense of self-worth depends on how others perceive you, then you will always be at their mercy. You will find yourself constantly chasing approval, constantly trying to prove your value, constantly seeking something that will never truly satisfy you, because no amount of external validation can replace the power of believing in yourself. When people rely on others to tell them they are enough, they give away their power. They become dependent on compliments to feel beautiful, on praise to feel competent, on acceptance to feel worthy. But what happens when the compliments stop? When the recognition fades? When the acceptance is no longer there? Does that mean they are any less valuable? Any less deserving? The answer is no, because true worth is not determined by how many people acknowledge it. It is something that exists within, regardless of who sees it. Believing in yourself means standing firm in who you are, even when no one applauds you. It means trusting your abilities, even when no one recognizes them. It means knowing that your dreams matter, even when others doubt them. The most successful and inspiring people in the world did not reach greatness because they were constantly validated by others. They reached greatness because they refused to let the absence of validation stop them. They kept moving forward, even when no one believed in them. They pursued their goals, even when others ignored them. They trusted their vision, even when it seemed impossible. The moment you stop seeking validation is the moment you set yourself free. Free from the fear of judgment, free from the need to prove yourself, free from the limitations that come from constantly trying to meet other people's expectations. Instead of looking outward for approval, you start looking inward for strength. Instead of waiting for someone to tell you that you are capable, you tell yourself. Instead of depending on others to see your worth, you recognize it within yourself. Because in the end, the belief that truly matters is not what others think of you, but what you think of yourself. And once you embrace that, no amount of rejection, no amount of ignorance, no amount of silence can ever take away the power that comes from knowing your own worth. Every person longs to be heard, to be understood, to feel that their words hold value. From simple conversations to expressing deep emotions, there is an innate desire to be acknowledged. But sometimes, no matter how much effort is put into communication, it feels as if the words are lost in the wind, unheard and unnoticed. It is in these moments that doubt creeps in, making one question if their voice truly matters. When people ignore what is being said, when opinions are dismissed, when contributions go unrecognized, it is easy to feel insignificant. But the reality is, just because some do not hear you does not mean your voice lacks power. A voice is not defined by the number of people who acknowledge it. It is not measured by how many people listen, agree, or respond. The power of a voice lies in the truth it carries, the impact it creates, and the strength with which it is spoken. Some of the most influential voices in history were once ignored. They were met with silence, rejection, and even opposition. But they did not stop speaking. They did not silence themselves just because the world refused to listen. They continued, knowing that their words held meaning, even if they were not immediately recognized. Every great movement, every change in society, every breakthrough started with a voice that refused to be silenced. There were times when it seemed like no one was listening, times when the words fell on deaf ears, but that did not make them any less powerful. It is easy to believe that in a world filled with noise, one voice cannot make a difference, but history has proven otherwise. A single voice, when used with conviction, can spark revolutions, heal wounds, and inspire generations. Many people give up on speaking out because they do not receive an immediate response. They assume that if their words are ignored, they are not worth saying. But what they fail to realize is that words have a way of reaching people long after they are spoken. Sometimes they plant seeds in the minds of others, growing silently until the right moment. Sometimes they resonate with someone who may not respond at the moment, but carries those words in their heart, and sometimes they are meant not for the world to hear, but for the speaker to understand their own strength. The key is to never let the silence of others determine the value of your voice. Keep speaking, keep expressing, keep standing for what you believe in. There will be those who ignore you, those who dismiss you, and those who refuse to listen. But there will also be those who need your words, who find hope in them, who are changed by them. Even if it seems like no one is listening today, it does not mean your voice does not matter. It does. It always has. And one day, the right people will hear it, and it will make all the difference.